Hello, hello, everyone. It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover. And thanks for hanging out with me today. Today, we have a very, very, very special guest on the show. Today, we're going to be hanging out with the one person that we all know because whenever we think about dry eye or medical optometry, we think about Dr. Leslie Odell. Dr. Odell, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Darryl. Thank you so much for reaching out and getting me on.
Oh, thank you for hanging out with me today. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to just really picking your brain and learning more about you, but also just your brand. I mean, you have so many amazing things going on that I just wanted to be able to hang out with you and share it with the world. Before we get started, the one thing that I always love to do is really just to get to know who I'm talking to, right? So today I would like for you to just give me an overview of who is Dr. Leslie Odell.
So I would say that the biggest thing that would define me is that I have a passion for lifelong learning. And I think that a lot of us, who have found our way to optometry would all feel the same way. I really enjoy, what I really, love about our profession is that it isn't stagnant and it's ever evolving. And I constantly get to learn new things about, our eyes, the body. Those are definitely my big areas of passion. But that's not all that I am. I am a wife and a mother. I am the youngest sister of three daughters, and I have a very close relationship with my family. And if honestly it wasn't for them, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be able to to do all of the fun, cool things that I have been able to do over the past several years.
Awesome, awesome. Well, to me, family is everything. So I'm glad that your family were very instrumental in just creating who Dr. Leslie Odell is. But let's dig a little deeper. Let's talk about your optometry school, where you were from, what you loved to do when you were younger. Because when it comes to hanging with your favorite optometrist, I like to peel back the layers. We know that you're a rock star, but let's get to know you a little bit better, if you don't mind, Dr. Odell.
Sure. Well, I am from York, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour north of Baltimore, Maryland, and about an hour south of the capital of Pennsylvania, Harrisburg. And that is actually where I practice as well. So I swore to myself when I went to optometry school that I would never return. But here I am. And I chose to be here, and I'm glad for it.
Awesome. And which school did you go to?
I went to Philadelphia, PCO, but now Salus University.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I remember being at the 100-year anniversary at PCO, and we were messaging back and forth, and I didn't realize that we went to the same school.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know that either. And it was my husband's birthday, so I couldn't make it to that event.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular. I really enjoyed myself. But what can I say? I mean, I expect that. PCO, they put out the best optometrists in the industry, right?
Yeah. I mean, I loved my time in Philadelphia and was sort of sad to leave. I think that and my family's only about 2 hours from Philadelphia, but I ended up from there going to Baltimore to the VA hospital, and then that sort of got me back into York County.
Gotcha. Yeah, me being from the South, North Carolina, going to Philly was a completely different experience. I enjoyed it, but I remember the first day going there, two things happened to me. Number one, I just saw people throwing trash on the ground, and I was like, we don't do that in the South.
That's terrible.
And it was just a normal thing, And then the other thing was, and I knew that I was up north at this point in time, was I went into a Walmart, and I opened the door for a group of ladies that were coming in. And then they looked at me like I was crazy. They were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I was just trying to open the door for you." And I was just like, the north to south, completely different places, So it kind of scarred me a little bit, but then I bounced back, and then I truly enjoy just the culture that is in Philadelphia. I mean, it's so much history, the food, the culture, the people. Once you understand what's taking place, it can really change your life and help develop you as a person.
Yeah, I definitely agree there.
Awesome. Well, this is great. We have a little background of who you are. I think it's only right that, having you on the show, you have to tell us what birthed your love for dry eyes or for dry eye in general, because you are a star. I mean, when I think about dry eye, I think about Leslie Odell, Dr. Leslie Odell. It's like the two just go together. So if you don't mind just breaking down, where did that love and that passion come from?
Well, thank you, because I feel like I have put a lot of hard work into developing that brand, but it really was just the passion that I developed in wanting to help the patients that I served. So I was working in an ophthalmology practice, and it was 2004, and managing a lot of post-operative care, and dry eye. But at the time, there was little known about surgical dry eye. We only had one way to treat it, which was Restasis at the time. And so the challenge was that there weren't a lot of treatment options. There wasn't a big understanding. But the advantage was that I feel like my career, I sort of feel like I grew up alongside of dry eye. So I was learning, as it was being published, because, everything was so new. And that even really sparked my interest for getting involved, and I know we'll talk more, but about TFOS, because at the time, Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society was one of only, a few things that were bringing together dry eye experts. And if you think about that, their first report, 2007, with the dry eye workshop, and I was just kind of in the beginning of my career at that time. Where I worked was a very progressive ophthalmology center. And so I was very fortunate to be able to keep pushing the envelope for dry eye management and bring in new technologies. We were the first in Pennsylvania to offer LipiFlow thermal pulsation. And so I really got an early, experience with that, and now have treated several hundred patients, in different locations throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And just really even seeing how meibomian gland disease and our understanding and our treatment options now have expanded. We don't just have LipiFlow thermal pulsation. We have things like tear care, or we have iLux, or we have IPL. It's just been really exciting, not only to see that, but also to see the changes in our colleagues. So I remember, in 2010 or 11, first talking about these glands, and people weren't really paying that much attention to them. And now I feel like we have reached the tipping point where, meibomian gland evaluation is part of your exam, especially if it's a dry eye focused exam.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it looks like we have a question here from the man that has all the answers, Dr. Adam Ramsey. He
Dr.
wanted to get your take on the iLux device, because I know he's always buying up all types of gadgets for his office, and being that you are the queen of dry eye, I think it'd be great to get your insight on this device.
Yes, so I have had some experience with iLux early on, and I do feel like, again, anything that we can do to help thin the meibomian gland, or the meibum secretion, and help to move it out is great for patient management. So this particular device I like because it has that specific heat. You can see visibly when the meibum is thinning, and then you are in control of kind of pushing the meibum out for patients. The only limitation that I personally see is that when I'm treating the superior glands, I only really can do one zone. It's a little hard to do an entire superior lid. That being said, sometimes management now is, not as targeted on that superior lid. The thought, maybe gravity's helping us a little bit more there, and maybe just warming treatments at home can help that patient. But I think it's a great technology. And if you're going to do anything in dry eye for your patients, which, that's always argued, where are your dry eye patients? Well, they're there. I feel like it's dry eye until proven otherwise for most of our patients. But I would say, iLux, the advantage is small footprint, lower cost of entry, lower cost to the patient. Same is true with Sight Science technology, with the tear care system.
Awesome. Well, the one thing that I really love is that, early in your career, you accepted the technology. You didn't look at, oh, what is this? Let me do the old way of doing things. You really.
Well, one advantage, Daryl, is it wasn't my own money that I was spending.
Ah.
So I do actually always think, well, at least I made the case that I could, plead an really exceedingly expensive piece of equipment at the time with the LipiFlow system. But I think that we paid it off within 6 months, which I also thought was, pretty awesome. But I probably would have been a little bit more conservative if it was my own money.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I mean, I'm a firm believer of using other people's money. I mean, anytime myself and Dr. Adam Ramsey, who just asked the question, wants to do some type of business deal, I'm like, hey, let's use your money, man, not mine, and he just laughs and chuckles. But I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
But while we're on this topic, if you don't mind just breaking down for someone that's new out of school or someone that wants to get more into medical optometry, what's a good starting point for just having a dry eye practice? I mean, I know there's some basic things that we can do behind a slit lamp, but if you don't mind touching on those basic things and maybe the first piece of equipment that you would actually recommend for them to purchase for their practice.
Yeah, that's a question that I get a lot. And one podcast that's kind of been born out of modern optometry is called To the Point. And that is a really, really great podcast that I do with alongside Jackie Garlick.
Love
And so she's sort of asking the questions, how do I do this or how do I do that? And I'm helping to guide her as she builds her dry eye clinic in Boston. But the biggest thing that I would say is that patients are there. Like I said, they're dry eye until proven otherwise. We see things now with the digital devices. We'll talk about, cosmetic things, and that doesn't mean exclusive to females because, we're using products every day that can disrupt the homeostasis of the tear film and disrupt the meibomian glands. But I think that what I would say is just start looking for dry eye patients in your practice. And sometimes that's the first step is just seeing, oh, this is a big part of what I'm doing every day. The biggest thing that you can do to identify them, not only through your exam, is just employing a simple questionnaire. Two that stand out to me are the speed and then the DEQ5, because they're short and simple and they don't take a lot of brain power on the patient's end. And a lot of times you could just be missing because you're not asking the right questions, or you're waiting for the technician to say, Mrs. Jones has watering eyes, but maybe her eyes just are tired or get blurry on the computer and you didn't ask that, so she didn't tell you. Or maybe her eyes feel completely fine the day she's in and she forgot about 2 months ago when they were, red and irritated and all of that. So those questionnaires help to pull that kind of thing out. And then as far as testing, equipment, I always say, and I know I'm not alone, but stay simple to start, and then build your practice and use the monies, to buy the technology. And so vital dyes, I mean, you can learn so much from vital dyes, and they are not a big, expense to the practice. And so I would pair a fluorescein with a lissamine green, and you're going to identify a lot just by using vital dyes and using them the right way. And actually, I will be the first to tell you that I learn as I go, and I often am learning from those ahead of us that are far smarter than I'll ever be. But I was lucky enough to work on a research project several years ago. It was looking at thermal pulsation with LipiFlow for increasing contact lens wearability. And then also we had a second study that we were able to help with that was looking at if you did LipiFlow prior to cataract surgery, what kind of outcomes were you going to have? And just to be able to read the protocol that Don Korb wrote for those studies made me a better dry eye doctor. So the one thing that I had been doing wrong up until that point was using my vital dyes and just being ready to go look at the eye. So I would put the dye in and head right to the slit lamp. Now, when I do that with my fluorescein, I do want to go right to the slit lamp because I want to check for the rapid tear breakup. I still don't have access to non-invasive ways, but I think soon I will.
Yeah.
But really waiting. So after you get that initial tear breakup time, stepping back, maybe talking to the patient a little bit more about symptoms or medication or lifestyle things, and then giving it the 90 seconds that it needs to really show you what you want to see.
Yeah.
So when you go back to the patient after you've waited that time, you're going to pick up on fine keratitis on the cornea. You're going to see a lot more in the conjunctival tissues. And I think just being a little bit patient with ourselves is helpful.
Yeah, I love that. And what I really would like to do is really deconstruct these dyes a tad bit more. Let's talk a little bit about more of what you find when you use a lissamine green or rose miguel, because, a lot of times we come out of school and the only thing that we'll use is just the fluorescein and that's it. But from having this conversation with you, it seems like these other dyes can really give us a lot of great information that can really take that dry eye care to the next level and potentially save the patient more money simply because you may prescribe something that may not be the best option for that patient off of just looking at one dye. So if you don't mind just deconstructing the different dyes that are available to us that you use with patients in a little more
Yeah.
detail there.
So I would look at your lissamine green stain as kind of like an undercover agent or something. It's looking for inflammation that you readily can't see. So the eye might not be red. Your cornea might not show any staining at all with fluorescein, but the lissamine will fill in on the conjunctival surface a lot of times for me, and definitely the underside of the lid with what is called lid wiper epitheliopathy. Again, another thing that I didn't learn in school and kind of learned as I was teaching myself about dry eye over the years. So that is just that nice green band that when you pull down the lower lid, or you can see it on the superior lid, it's just a band of staining green across the bottom.
Yep.
And that, indicates that there is an issue with clearance. So the tissue is slightly swollen. As that patient blinks, it's going to drag the tears. It's going to disrupt homeostasis. It's going to lend to things like foreign body sensation. And then worse, as that goes on and is missed and not treated or undertreated, it's going to start developing changes to the conjunctival tissue that we now are, kind of lumping into mechanical dry eye. And that's that loosening of the conjunctival tissue with the conjunctival cheilitis, which is really a very downstream inflammatory process in our dry eye patients that if we actually could catch early, they don't have to be doing, this tear reservoir reconstruction surgery or surgery, to remove the excess tissue.
Yeah. No, that's great information. I'm pretty sure everyone has their notepad and they're taking the notes because the famous Dr. Leslie Odell
Oh,
has
right. I
spoken.
do appreciate the famous. My friends from college were like, "You're famous?" And then I said, well, maybe in the eye world, and they were all, it was cute. Um, so I had a little bit of fun with that over the weekend. I
Well, yeah,
appreciate
I mean, hey, you are well respected in this industry, and I learn so much from you every time I have a conversation with you or any of the other dry eye divas, and I'm able to take that back to my practice and really implement it and change a patient's life, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
The other thing
Oh, go
I
ahead.
was going to just say real quick about lissamine, if you don't mind. The other thing, when you are treating dry eye disease, remember that the eye is still connected to the rest of the person, and our job is to identify any systemic illness that could be contributing, whether that's something like Sjogren's syndrome or another connective tissue disorder, rheumatoid arthritis, or even just side effects of medications that they're using. It really helps the patient in the long run. That being said, one of the other cool things about lissamine green, and it's not 100%, if you see this it means Sjogren's, but
Right.
if you're seeing a lot of temporal conjunctival staining with your lissamine green, you want to be thinking about Sjogren's syndrome, and then you want to be asking other questions to see if that's going to trigger you to do any blood work. So for me, those other questions are usually, I ask about the dry mouth. I ask about problems with their teeth, whether they have had a lot of cavities or dental work.
Yeah.
Could they chew a saltine cracker, swallow it without the help of water? And then some other ones that sometimes we might not really contribute to Sjogren's would be fatigue. So these patients have an overwhelming fatigue that by the end of the day, midday, they are wiped out. And also chronic pain. And that's because it is such an inflammatory process.
Right, right. And the one thing that I think that you really touched on here with all of these different dyes, and you mentioned it at the top of this dye conversation, is being able to have that communication with the patient, that doctor-patient interaction. When you put that dye in, you're talking to them, you're pulling out all this information to really figure out what the problem is, whether it's something that's environmental, whether it's something that is systemic, but you're really digging and asking questions. And what I want to get into next is really the world of makeup, because I think this is huge for all optometrists. I would love for you just to break down just the top 10 toxic chemicals in makeup, because I feel like us as optometrists, us as eye care professionals, especially men, and also some women, we don't have this dialogue in the exam room enough to really break down some of these toxic things that can really cause a lot of issues with our patients' lifestyles.
Yeah. I think that we're getting a lot better. In 2016, when myself and Amy Gallant Sullivan and Laura Perryman published a study at Arvo, and it might have even been 2015. It was, that question, is your eye care provider having the conversation about cosmetics? And an overwhelming 92% of our participants said no.
Wow.
But I know a lot has changed in these past 4 to 5 years. I think that the conversation around cosmetics has been really ramped up, and I'm really excited to have been part of that change within both optometry and ophthalmology. The first lecture I heard probably dates back maybe 8 or 10 years ago, given by a female. It was an ophthalmology lecture, and they basically were talking about dry eye as it pertained to your cosmetic wearing patients, and you should tell them to stop, almost indefinitely. And I was thinking to myself, this is not going to be very well received. And, what is in these, cosmetics that is so harmful that we need to be avoiding them at all costs. What I think that science has really helped us identify over the past several years, and it's growing all the time, is what chemicals are most harmful, and that we can kind of, like you said, develop, okay, maybe let's avoid these, and try to tailor your cosmetic wearing habits while I'm treating your dry eye. And then just like a dry eye patient, if they are managed properly, can move on to having surgeries, right? Like cataract surgery or refractive surgery. Just, you can actually get a patient to be back in their routine of cosmetic wearing habits if you're treating the disease. But I will say that the list also is evolving, and there's way more than 10 chemicals that we should be avoiding. But with mounting research, the list is expanding, but kind of the top 10 is just a fun thing. It's easy to remember, easy to pass along to your patients. Alcohol. Alcohol is in a lot of things, serums, makeup removers, and obviously very drying to the skin around the eye. And we don't want it to be within the ocular surface, because there's a lot of harm for alcohols, to the ocular surface. So that one's kind of stands out as an easy one to talk to. The other easy one for us to use is BAK. So benzalkonium chloride is commonly found, again, in makeup removers. Sometimes I've seen it in products like mascaras, because it is a very good preservative. I mean, that's why we have it in all of our drops. It helps prevent bacterial overgrowth, right? In eye care, we know that BAK is going to create conjunctival and corneal staining. When I was first going through my training, it was thought that you needed BAK because it needed to make the opening into the eye for your medication to get in,
Right.
which was in turn, the keratopathy that you were seeing, and that is such a big part of underlying dry eye disease. But and that's in minuscule doses, right? 0.003, 0.001. I mean, tiny doses. But now there's research out of Harvard that shows that it is, even in these low concentrations, harmful to the meibomian glands when they're in cell culture. So not on the living eye, but plated on cell culture, kills them. Well, when you look at the cosmetics and the makeup removers, we're talking mega dose. Thousands of times higher concentration than we're used to seeing in eye drops. And so there's a lot of concern. Lyndon Jones, who does a lot of work with contact lens related issues and dry eye as well, has a really interesting paper that he published around makeup removal and application in our contact lens wearing patients.
Okay.
So it looks at how contact lens parameters changed with the use of mascara and then makeup removers. And one of the makeup removers that they used has BAK in it. And what they did was they had them apply, makeup with the contact lenses in, remove it with them in. And even though the eyes are shut, often when you're removing things around your eye, a little bit of the solution is getting into the ocular surface, and it changed not only the power of the lens, but the parameters. So it changed the way that contact lens was going to fit on the eye. Really, thinking more about daily wear, disposable lenses for patients who wear cosmetics is something that we should definitely be thinking about.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. anyone that comes into my practice, especially in today's society, especially in the current climate of COVID, I'm always preaching dailies. It just makes sense,
Yeah.
right? And I've always been a big fan of dailies, but where it really hit me, especially when dealing with my ladies that love makeup and love false lashes, is from one of the conversations that I had with you in the Dry Divas a while back. Long lashes create a wind tunnel. And that is a conversation that I have every single day in my office with patients, and then also having that conversation about the glue. So to have a daily, something that you can put in and toss out the same day, is definitely the right good step in the right direction to make sure that these patients, these ladies, are able to use the stuff that they want to, but also make sure that they have the best vision or the best comfort with their contact lens as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there is some debate about the putting your contact in prior or after. And, depends on vision, because some people actually need the contact lens, right, to be able to see themselves, to put on their makeup. But whenever you can apply makeup, I think without the contact lens, it makes sense if you can see.
Yeah.
And and definitely removing it prior to removing your makeup at the end of the day is the way that I think that should go. But that's kind of still debated amongst different providers, I would say.
Yeah.
Formaldehyde, getting to the lash glue, that's kind of what is a big part of the eyelash industry, and the lash glue is formaldehyde. But so again, another preservative, but just one that doesn't really belong near the eye. We don't want to be preserving the eye necessarily. the petrified frog in the jar floating. Another one that is like a topical neurotoxin is called arginine. And so a lot of times that's advertised like Botox in a jar to help with fine lines and wrinkles. But there is concerns about how that also is going to interact with meibomian gland stasis and not allowing the meibum to secrete like it should.
Right.
Staying with the eyelashes, another one is the serums that are growing our lashes. And they are, whether they are, prostaglandin based that we're used to seeing with our glaucoma medications like Latisse, or synthetic prostaglandins like isopropyl cloprostinate, they still are in that class of prostaglandins. And that is a very pro-inflammatory class of medication. And so not only are people growing lashes, but they're also promoting lid inflammation that looks like redness to the lid margin, that again looks like meibomian gland dysfunction. And then it can actually look like more physical changes that are hard to improve upon. And that is ptosis. And that's also, thinning of the fat layer around the eye, causing kind of a sunken eye look. So not always the most attractive thing, especially for these people that are trying to enhance appearance, and a lot of times not really labeled that well.
Right.
I know there was a recent study by another awesome fellow OD that's heavy into the cosmetic research, Tracy Dahl, and she presented her work also at ARVO this year, 2020, and it was looking at consumers that had been using prostaglandin or lash growth serums. And the risk of complications, I think she was at like 43 or 45% of her respondents said that they had a problem. So
that's significant.
Yeah, pretty significant.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you talk to the patients, they'll say, "Oh yeah, my eyelid's a little bit red," but they love the eyelash and they just cover it up with another cosmetic.
Yeah.
So sometimes they'll be willing to trade off.
And one other thing too that I've noticed with ladies, and now they're starting to become more comfortable when I'm in the exam room having this dialogue, is that they don't always want to tell me that they're using that lash serum. So it's one of those things that I guess us as eye care professionals, again, going back to that doctor-patient interaction and communication, we have to do a little more digging because we could keep running in circles not knowing what's going on if we are not able to pry that information out of the patient. Yeah. I just had a case like this past Friday when I was in patient care. And then the lady finally at the end said, "Oh, I've been using so-and-so brand. I just thought you might want to know that," after I broke down that barrier.
I know.
And that was the main issue of why her eyelid margin was so inflamed. I'm like, Hey, you know where this lash serum came from and where it stemmed from? This was a glaucoma drug, and these are the side effects. Longer lashes, redness of the eyes, change in periorbital region, change in iris color, like all of these things. And then she's like, why am I using this? I'm like, hey, I'm just, don't shoot me. I'm
Right.
just, you know.
Well, I'm sure she appreciated it because, like I said, they're not really getting that education by, wherever they're buying it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, right. And I noticed some of these because I read an article that you were a part of. Some of these have, you can get cancer, or there's like some type of carcinogen effect that could take place from using these products as well. If you don't mind just touching on a few
Yeah,
of
so
those.
that kind of gets to the next one on my list, which would be parabens. And there's a lot of research around parabens from the Breast Cancer Fund. And interestingly, if you read some of the research that comes out of that, breast cancer research,
Yeah,
they will really educate any breast cancer survivor to avoid parabens. But that conversation is not always being had. So I will have that conversation if I'm seeing a patient that is a breast cancer survivor. We'll kind of go through and see if they are using any products with parabens. And a lot of times they aren't hearing that from their oncologist. The other thing that I also drive home in those patients, and I'm sure you do as well, we were really taught this at SALIS or PCO, which was those breast cancer survivors and lung cancer survivors need what? A dilated eye exam.
absolutely.
But I have yet to meet a breast cancer survivor that's been told that, how important their eye health is after living through that.
Yeah.
And so I think that messaging is also just, kind of off topic, but important for us to continue. Phenoxyethanol is a preservative often used when parabens aren't used. And it is also harmful to meibomian glands. Again, there's research out of a Harvard lab that shows us that now. Retinols, which, huge thing right now. We're all trying to preserve Mother Nature, I guess. So we want to work hard on fine lines and wrinkles. I still would say maybe, hat and sun protection is your best bet on there. But retinols can, again, most of these things wreak havoc on meibomian glands, and that's another one there. Sodium lauryl sulfate in a lot of face cleansers and any kind of soapy cleanser. And we know that those can cause keratitis and corneal damage. And then rounding out the list is kind of a new one, and I always like to give you breaking news, but it is tea tree oil. So kind of like I said, breaking news. The same Harvard lab is getting ready to publish in cornea. And I am allowed to share a little bit of the findings, but again, looking at meibomian gland cell culture and terpenol, or the 4T4O, which is a component of tea tree oil, that in even very low concentrations, 1% and 0.1%, is showing damage to meibomian gland in cell culture. So something to be on the lookout for as that is published in cornea. And then we'll have to really kind of look and see about, we need Demodex treatments.
Right.
There are new Demodex treatments that are going to prove to be very exciting. Tarsus Pharmaceuticals has an eye drop in development that is claiming to be a cure for collarettes, which is, how we identify Demodex a lot of times, at the slit lamp.
Right.
And so we might have other options, but when you do need a tea tree oil cleanser, you just might not want that patient to be on it indefinitely.
Gotcha.
Right. Or if you have to be using a tea tree oil cleanser, you want to be, knowing the status of the meibomian glands ahead of your treatment, monitoring throughout.
Yeah.
And same is true for, some of these beauty trends. There's always going to be someone that's not going to give up false eyelashes, even though we're educating to them what's best.
Right.
So then your job becomes, managing the underlying cause, managing the meibomian gland disease or the dry eye that comes along with the cosmetic lifestyle, or, the hours on a digital device, right? So you're not going to tell your patient, never touch your computer again, because we know that it's going to create meibomian gland dysfunction and dry eye disease. But you're going to say, hey, I know you need to be working on your computer now more than ever. And I'm here to help you keep your eyes healthy throughout that process, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great segue into this next question we have. I mean, are there any training videos from you on dry eye disease management for us in developing countries, considering our challenges in the industry will be highly appreciated? I mean, this is a great question. Not only are there training videos, or is there a resource that you would recommend, But for these women, men, whoever may come in with makeup issues or false lashes, I mean, is there a product on the market that you recommend or that you could talk to us about that we could say, hey, this is something that doesn't have all these negative ingredients in it that will help give you better eye care and also help you to see better? I mean, if you don't mind touching on that for me, Dr. Odell.
For sure. So it's been a really exciting 6 months. I've been able to help launch a cosmetic company, which I would never have guessed, when I was starting my training that I would be doing anything like that. And so Amy Gallant Sullivan has developed one of the first lines, the first line that is developed with your eye in mind, free of a lot of these chemicals. It is called Eyes Are the Story. And that I know that you have some familiarity with that line, but it is composed of, right now to start, a mascara, an eyeliner, a removal in the form of an eye towelette, and then a facial serum and a facial wash.
Yeah.
It has been picking up a lot of momentum. We have a lot of clinics across the country and in Canada that are reselling this to patients or retailing it to patients. And the feedback has been really awesome from people who haven't been able to wear makeup for many years, being able to do that, to, people wearing mascara without really noticing their eyes throughout the day. So
Right.
that's one line. As far as being able to, learn for yourself, I would say, the biggest resource and what I did when I was getting into dry eye is the Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society. I mean, they do have education videos. They have a plethora of information. And what they do so well is really lean on the experts in the field, whether ophthalmologists or optometrists or researchers, to distill down all of the studies and tell us what is most important. And so, tearfilm.org and that dry eye workshop, TFOS Dry Eye Workshop 2, which was from 2017, is a lot of information. And anyone that's interested in dry eye disease really should take some time and do a deep dive into that, as well as their meibomian gland workshop from 2011.
Yeah.
Those things I think are worth your time.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And one other thing that I would strongly recommend is following you on social media, because you do an amazing job with just posting different statistics and then linking the resource where people can just get that information right away. Whether it's something on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you're always putting content out there that's very valuable that we can utilize in our practice.
Yeah. So the I actually switched it to Dry Eye Diva. It was Help My Dry Eyes. And then you're always reinventing yourself. So right now on Instagram, it's Dry Eye Diva. And I do try to put out, I actually have to reformulate because now I haven't been traveling. So I kind of had a system with Instagram. I would do like a fact, and then I would do a photo with the doctor, and then I would do kind of a video. But I ran out of photos with doctors because I haven't been anywhere. And so now I'm kind of in I don't know where to go from here. I'm kind of figuring that all out. But there's still a lot of good information there from the past year, and hard to believe I only actually started that about a year ago at Vision Expo. About a year ago.
Yeah. I love following you because I get all those great stats. But one thing you could do to supplement not being being able to go out and shake hands and kiss babies is just start taking screen caps of what we're doing right now.
Oh, you're right.
Right?
Yeah, you're right.
You're doing things.
I know. You're so smart. This is why I love you so much. I'm just taking a picture real quick. Smile.
Yeah, take a picture.
All right. I'll get that up.
Well, one thing I really wanted to touch on, especially why I have you here, Dr. Odell, is I really wanted to kind of switch gears and really go into more of your entrepreneur side, more of your business side, more of being a woman in optometry, because I think you have an amazing story. And a lot of times people just see the surface. They don't understand day one what it was like to where you're at now. And I know you graduated from PCO at whatever date, and now you've probably seen the trend of women increasing in optometry. I mean, my class was 70%. And I don't know if it was that way in your class, but you've seen a big shift in the landscape of how optometry looks. So if you don't mind just really talking about maybe some of the challenges that you encountered throughout your career. And then I would love to just dive deep into some of the things that you have your hands in today outside of Eyes Are the Story and some of the other things that you're touching on as
Yeah.
well.
So I think that the hardest part for me, as far as being a woman, is that I feel like I have always been the first woman in the practices that I have been part of. And that maybe, doesn't seem like a big deal, but my first job, especially, I was the first woman in a ophthalmology practice that was only a one doctor practice.
Okay.
So that was a challenge in itself because not only was well, I don't look what I used to, but when I was 27 or 26 and had my first job, maybe 25, the comment would always be, was I in high school? And so I was blessed with a youthful face, I guess. And I would get so mad. Like, of course I graduated. Like, do you know how many years I have been in school? Like, it was so insulting to me.
Right, right.
Then in my early 30s, I started to get some gray hairs. I actually kept them because I was getting so annoyed by these questions. So then I would just be like, don't you see the gray hair? Like, I am old enough to be doing this job. And now I've actually started to cover them back up again because there's way too many. But I feel like that was a challenge because I had to explain, youth and, was I old enough to be smart enough to be taking care of them?
Right.
And then I actually had to explain what optometry was because a lot of the patients had never been exposed to optometry ahead of me being in that practice in particular. And, just being able to explain, like, optometry is a great profession. We are trained to do a lot medically. And, if it's non-surgical, we're here for you, right? Depending on what state you're in, at least in my state, if it's non-surgical, I can do most everything. But I think that's, one of the big things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're getting love with that. I mean, Dr. Christie is
Oh,
doing the same exact thing. And
I'm reading that.
it's tough. I mean, I'll be upfront with you. You know, when I was younger, I didn't have this big beard. I was baby face basically, and a lot of patients would come in and they'll say the same thing. I have these. I like to call them seasoned ladies come in and they're like, "Son, are you old enough to even have your license?" And I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." So then I grew a beard and the beard kind of stuck. And then my wife was like, you know what? I like that beard. You don't have a chin anyway, so you have to keep that beard. And if you don't keep that beard, you can't come back in this house. So ever since then, I've been rocking the beard and it helps out on all ends. In practice, they look at me as someone that knows what they're talking about just simply because of the look. But then also at home, I get more love from the wife. So it's a win-win situation for me. But no, I understand exactly what you're saying. It is bad that patients.
And even with the staff.
Mhm.
So when you're the only female doctor in a male run practice ahead of you, and most of the staff in most, there's maybe been one or two men that have been working, whether it's as a technician or a practice administrator. I feel like that also was a little bit different to start. But then again, once, so I almost always felt like I had to prove myself a
Right.
little bit more. But then once you worked with any of these people, for a small amount of time, they would realize, you really did know what you were talking about, and accept you. When I was younger and starting in that practice, I was fortunate to have a scribe. But my scribes, I was always younger than my scribes. And,
Oh, wow.
I felt like that even was a weird dynamic. But we worked through it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I get it.
Nothing worth doing is easy, right? So it's good to have these challenges. And now I'm excited because I actually will get to be the lead doctor in a new venture. And I'm really excited to kind of put together my own team. We'll see how
Well,
that goes.
let's segue into that. Let's not hold this back. Let's get that drum roll going, and let's talk about that today. Because again, you are a star, you are famous, and everyone comes to you when it comes to medical optometry, especially around that dry eye world. So I would love to dive deep into what your new venture is that you're jumping into.
Yeah, so timely fashion, as always, for you, Darryl, is today the press release is literally hitting the wire, if you will. And last week, I finally secured a lease for a location. So really breaking news as to what I've been up to, kind of undercover for the past 4 or 5 months. So Medical Optometry America is a new concept for optometry. And really what it is a medically focused eye practice. So really focusing just on ocular disease, not having an optical, not doing the traditional way of optometry clinics. But really, what we're hoping is to really spark change within the optometry profession. Everything you see as far as practice management, the way the schools are teaching, pushing more and more toward medical, all of the disruptors that are out there with online sales of glasses, with disruption in the contact lens field, kind of pushing us to reinvent ourselves. And that's what Medical Optometry America is seeing, and trying to give optometrists, like-minded optometrists like myself, kind of a home and a platform to do just that, what they're trained to do. So MOA is really the catalyst for change in our profession. And what the hope is to provide us, the optometrists, with a turnkey system to shift more into that medical-minded practice. And so the thought is actually to open franchise type practices across the country. My role is the first regional clinical director in my hometown, York County, but actually a small town in York County called Shrewsbury, Pennsylvania is going to be where the first location will be. And we are just, like I said, just secured the lease and going to start our build out and hoping to open for December of this year. So super exciting. But that's not where MOA stops. It's really looking for optometrists that are medical minded, that have an interest in practice ownership. And really, if you want more information there, the best place is the website, which is medodamerica.com.
Wow, I love it. And we've slowly been seeing this shift to the medical optometry model over the last X amount of years. And for you to really just take that and run with it and make the first official practice, and then have a turnkey approach where you're going to implement it all across the United States and potentially the world, I think is phenomenal. And I think, what we have to realize as eye care professionals, especially optometrists, is that we're the gateway into the healthcare system. So we really need to look at medical optometry more. You can still sell your glasses and contacts, there's no doubt about it. I'm a guy that I love that retail aspect, but I do understand the importance of the medical aspect. And when you're able to combine both, or be able to, have someone that you can refer to that's still an optometrist that can take that lane and run with it, I think it's just something that's going to uplift our profession and take it to the next level and give us the respect that we deserve as eye care professionals. Because a lot of times we are diagnosing these autoimmune disorders, these vascular-related conditions, finding these tumors or whatever it may be in the back of the eye. So it only is right. And it's just easier because there's so many of us to really get out there and touch the patients with our basic routine eye exams.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and think about just the statistics of optometry versus our ophthalmology colleagues. There's 40,000 of us. There's one ophthalmologist for every 17,000 people. The baby boomers, and even this recent pandemic is really putting a strain on care. And we really have to step up to try to help with that. We don't need to be delaying care for things like glaucoma or macular degeneration or diabetic retinopathy, because, our surgeons are busy and they're trying to catch back up on, a few months delay with their cataract surgeries or what have you. I think there's a great way to build a relationship, with our ophthalmology colleagues, and help keep them doing what they are skilled at with surgical things, and keep us working to our highest level, as we're trained now.
Yeah.
Coming from PCO, such a huge ocular disease background. I mean, I then went to a residency at the Baltimore VA because I just wanted to learn more disease. Like, I didn't get enough. I needed more. But I remember, some of the colleagues I had there coming from like Ohio State, they weren't as fortunate. They were seeing a lot of young, healthy, college age patients that were really, they had a wealth of knowledge with contact lenses, but they weren't exposed a lot, to the disease state. So I think that, just my training alone has always been heavy in disease. I'm not getting away from dry eye management. Of course, it is a disease state of the eye, so it will still be something I do. And the hope is actually to really showcase dry eye in this new location. So there's vision for a really unique treatment room that is visible, from as soon as you enter into the practice to kind of spark some conversation with patients. But what I found at my most recent position at the Dry Eye Center of Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
I kind of missed, I kind of didn't like being just in the niche. I thought I wanted to be there. But when I got there, I realized like I really like glaucoma management. I
Right.
really like, macular degeneration, and I kind of missed it. And so I think that just it's okay to learn as you go, right?
Absolutely.
It's kind of been the theme of my life anyway. I feel
Yeah.
like, every experience I have has led to the next. And I'm really, really, really excited. MOA's already paired up with NECO. So I'm hoping to do another thing that I have yet to really be able to do, which is build a strong following for students, and hopefully maybe even a residency program through this MOA model. I feel like teaching others is just the way to keep me on top of my game.
Yeah.
I feel like, having students, not only me teaching them, but just seeing what they're learning in schools will again keep me sharp as I move forward.
Yeah, no, I love it, and shout out to Nuenco. Dr. Howard Purcell is always, changing the game. He's taking it to the next level, and I think, with him, that background of being in corporate or corporate optometry industry, I should say, and then having that academia aspect as well, that just has really opened up the eyes of the school and seeing that there's so much more that we could do to take eye care to the next level, because it should be a combination of both. You should have that background to stay in, instead of saying, one track with academia, academia, academia. You need that industry side, because whatever you learn in school, you have to apply in the real world. And we know the industry really runs the real world with different products and services that they provide for us to give to our patients. So I love that whole aspect.
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back to, how will this be when a patient comes in? You touched on, that kind of setup that you were mentioning earlier, but what's the typical eye exam look like when a patient walks in? Because you guys are doing something completely different from what's out there in the current setup for eye care. So if you don't mind just touching on that briefly.
So we have done what some people have done ahead of us, which is really focus on certain disease states and build out best practices around them. So if you were an MOA doctor in another location, not the location that I'm working in, we would have a similar platform that we're building off of, whether it's testing that we want to do on certain cases, and there's going to be some guidance even for treatment. One thing that I think, that I was always seeking, and I really think MOA is going to bring to the optometry community, was just a collaborative environment. And so, I kind of always felt like I was working on an island by myself. I mean, I felt like that for a good 11 years to start my career. And once I finally found a mentor, and they got out there and actually got to talk to more like-minded doctors like myself and build this team, I just felt like my, the way I could care for patients just was accelerated in a good way. And so I think that building that platform just within the MOA structure internally, but what the mission really is going to be for the public is just to help continue the conversation around your eye health, that your eye health is not always just looking good in your glasses, which we know you do. But it's also, feeling good in your eyes when it comes to dry eye disease. It's being healthy in your body and knowing that your eyes are the only place that we can actually see the blood vessels and give you an idea of your cardiovascular health, or, do a neurologic exam without having to do, a heavy lift with something like an MRI, at times.
Right.
And so just the push on what's going to be coined the MOA annual eye physical, to try to get away from the wording of routine eye exam and really help empower patients with some metrics on their vision and health, and really promote wellness along the way.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I could sit down here and talk to you all day, and I know we could do this, but let's slowly start to wrap it up. And
I know.
one thing that I wanted to really touch on, something that I always ask all my guests that like to hang out with their favorite optometrist, is what advice would you give your 21-year-old self? I mean, I think you've seen a lot in the industry, you've done a lot, and I think your insight will be unmatched. And I would love to just get your feedback in regards to what advice would you give yourself. because there's a lot of millennial doctors and younger optometrists and also seasoned doctors that could really benefit from what advice you would give.
The first thing that I would say is, be kind of open to change. Where you start isn't always going to be where you finish. And I really wouldn't think of it as failures along the way. Like I said, everything that I have done, although at the time I maybe didn't realize it was going to lead me to the next, you kind of know in your heart when you don't belong someplace anymore, or something that you thought was going to be the best thing ever, it turns out that it's going to lead you in another direction. So
Right.
I think just being open to that, and some of those conversations that I have had to have been the most challenging ones, but they've been the ones that helped me get to the next level. Find mentors. So one thing that I really actually regret is I was so focused on, learning in optometry school and boards and all of that, that I really didn't lean on the faculty that we had. I did then in my residency kind of lean on some of, my residency advisors, but, I didn't actually get a mentor until very long into my career. And I will say my first mentor was Art Epstein. And what I will tell you that I found is people want to help you.
Yeah.
So I was struggling. Like I felt like I had a lot to share about dry eye, but I just didn't know how to even start. And I would read articles by Art Epstein, and one of them happened to have his email. And I just reached out to him through email, introduced myself. And he said, "Why don't you call me up?" And so I was like, "Are you serious? Okay, I'm going to call you." But I did. I had a conversation on my back porch. I will never forget. Like I was a mom of two young kids, thinking like, I wanted to give more, not just to my family, but to our profession. And his advice to me is one I give to people now all the time is write. And so he encouraged me to write and submit to journals. And that, has led me to one of the things that I'm doing right now with Modern Optometry as a co-chief medical editor. Chances are good no one, would have even chose me for that role if I didn't take that advice.
Right.
But not to be afraid to reach out to people. Another person that was super receptive was David Sullivan of TFAS. So I had been reading all of this work from TFAS and thinking like, gosh, I just really, want to be a part of this. And how can I be a part of this? And, I had phone conversations with him about getting involved with the contact lens discomfort. Timing wasn't right for me. I think my son was maybe, an infant at the time, and I couldn't commit to travel at that time.
Right.
So, I said, I have to decline the offer right now, but it wasn't, from ill will or anything. And so then when things came around, like the TFAS Dry Eye Workshop Part 2, and they were looking for people to fill the Public Awareness Committee, they came back to me and said, would you be, willing to help? I mean, yes, I'll be willing to help. But I also did a couple things outside of my comfort zone. Like I picked up and went to Arvo one year when it was in Fort Lauderdale, literally to have a 5-minute meeting with David Sullivan face to face. So he would see who I was, see my passion for dry eye. And I feel like sometimes you just got to know, again, it was definitely something that I had a feeling from within. So I feel like kind of just listen to that inner voice because it's going to guide you along the way. And don't be afraid to talk to somebody that you might feel is kind of, unapproachable, because in our field, they're not. I mean, and especially as you get specialized, they want to share their knowledge with you. And so, lean on a mentor or many mentors. And I think that's something that you can really, really help get you where you want to be quicker.
Yeah.
And for women in our field, I will say, to continue to push with industry. So I have been fortunate over the past several years to get to do a lot of work with industry. And I sit on a lot of advisory board panels and such. And it's great. I love working with all types, but there's usually an underwhelming presence of us females. And I think that, what I have learned is that although it is sometimes a struggle, to balance everything, again, whatever your passion is, you can always find time for. So, if that's something that you want to do, you feel like I want to be working with industry, I want to help guide medications as they're coming out, the messaging to patients, contact lenses, really just reaching out. And the best way to do that is really developing your LinkedIn profile. So I feel like industry spends a lot more time on LinkedIn than
Absolutely.
than optometry does. You kind of think of LinkedIn like, oh, I need that to find a job, the job optometry. But really you need it if you want to be having the conversations with, all of the awesome industry partners that we have in optometry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. The one thing that we have to really be is open to change. We have to understand that it's okay to pivot, because you don't want to do something that you end up hating and regretting down the road. So be open to change. You got to be able to pivot. And
Flex on the X. That's what my husband says.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
And the whole aspect of mentorship is huge. A lot of my I would say my success, if you call it success, in the eye care industry is due to my mentors. I've been able to reach out to Dr. Artis Beatty with my eye doctor, who's the chief medical officer. And when I was a technician for our company, I was teching for him at one point, but I was able to reach out to him and tell him my vision and what I wanted to do. And ever since then, it's been probably 10, 15 years, I've been able to have that relationship with him. And, it's grown into me to become a better doctor after being able to get advice from someone up above to show me the right way and give me good information and tell me the right books to read and the way to move in the industry. And especially seeing a Black male do that as well, which is huge for me. And then I had another great mentor, Dr. Stephen Bolick. He was the owner of Eye Care Associates. And, he, to this day, he sold his practice for, I think it was like $80 million to private equity. To this day, I can still pick up the phone and call him and ask him and say, hey, I want to do this. What do you think?
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, let's talk about it, or let's meet in my office, and he'll make it happen. So, don't be afraid. Just because someone may be in a different tax bracket from you, or you feel like they're untouchable, or you feel like they're completely different from who you are, reach out to these people, because optometry is a small industry, but everybody wants this industry to be great. So they're definitely going to help you guys. Dr. Odell, I just want to really thank you for just hanging out with me today. This has been a great conversation, great dialogue from learning about your journey in eye care and the future of eye care with Medical Optometry America. I would love for all our listeners, all our colleagues, if they have a question and they want to learn more about what you have going on, or if they could be a part of some of the initiatives that you have moving, what's the best contact information for them to reach you?
Probably my email, which is helpmydryeyes with an S at gmail.com. That's probably the best way for me to get in touch with you. Again, if you have interest in doing things like writing, we at Modern Optometry are always looking for new content, new authors, and that's a great way to get your voice out there. But again, helpmydryeyes at gmail.com would be the best way.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. You guys, it's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover, and the famous Dr. Leslie Odell. Again, congratulations. Thanks for tuning in with us. And as always, stay healthy, stay positive, and stay blessed. Peace. Until next time, you guys, have a great one, okay?